Welcome back to New Rockstars, I'm Erik Voss, and Rick and Morty proved that just when you think you're getting a straightforward Prometheus episode, instead you get a non-linear butt-poppin' episode with 9/11 jokes that make you feel bad about Star Wars, which is impressive because the recent Star Wars movies already checked that box. Welcome back to Ricksplained, our Rick and Morty after show where we try to decode these episodes' hidden agendas with insiders from the show. This week we're chatting with all-star voiceover actor Tara Strong. But first, let's look deeper at season 4, episode 7, titled Promortyus. Its title is a take on Prometheus, the 2012 prequel to Alien with ridiculously stupid scientists exposing themselves to biohazards and unable to run sideways. While this episode's facehugger parasite follows the wet egg to facehugger to bodyburster life cycle of the xenomorphs in the Alien franchise, the writers also cited the villain Starro from the DC comics, a starfish-like extraterrestrial that asexually spawns spores of itself, attaches to hosts' faces, and controls their bodies. Glorzo and its inspirations reproduce and evolve rapidly, but our heroes, Rick and Morty, do not. They don't evolve, they're terrorists. They're incapable of empathy or real change. They begin the episode with no memory of how the facehuggers attach to their faces to begin with. They violently slaughter their way out of the situation as they always do, but then, halfway through the episode, we do something that the show's never done before. We jump way back in chronology to establish the in medias res circumstances of the opening act, and we discover that the Glorzo facehuggers weren't really that bad and capable of industrial feats and beautiful passion. Well, it made me uncomfortable, but I don't kink shame. The episode's writer calls Rick and Morty the villains of this episode, comparing them to the rebels of Star Wars, who do kill multitudes of stormtroopers with acts of terror that are okay just because the stormtroopers serve space Nazis.
They're the stock bad guys of every movie. Like in a Star Wars movie, you feel completely fine murdering thousands of stormtroopers, you don't think about it. But then we just wanted to switch that to like humanize these evil aliens. I always wondered, does the facehugger have dreams of its own?
The episode embraces Morty and Rick's lack of empathy even more than usual.
Damn, feels kind of good when there's no guilt, huh?
Yeah, it's like in Star Wars.
Yeah, just like in Star Wars. Go nuts.
Morty drops down in the gunner seat like the ones on the Millennium Falcon, and then he yee-haws like characters like Luke, Han, and Finn do.
I got him!
But then the episode underlines a morality switch by putting them in the driver's seat for a 9/11 style attack.
It's like popping bubble wrap. Honestly, I'm proud of us for not.
Totally. Would have been cheap.
Yeah, real low-hanging fruit. We're better than that.
Yeah, they swerve past the Glorzo Twin Towers, not out of a genuine care for life, but because of their own meta, selfish guilt out of making a 9/11 reference. But then...
Pearl Harbor, on the other hand.
Yeah, I think that's in bounds.
I am the god of death.
Should have been a better species.
So yeah, now later Rick justifies their violence alongside their other high body count episodes.
You know, maybe we went too hardcore on these guys.
Yeah, why do you think we never go back to a place we've already been? Do you know how many adventures we could get out of Purge Planet, Morty? Gear World? I don't sequel, it's called Integrity.
Look Who's Purging Now ended with the most violent slaughter we've seen on the show. And in Morty Night Run, Morty's aversion to violence in Gear World ends up being one of the most apocalyptic ends for society. And Rick's reason for not going back to those places wasn't out of fear of the violence in his wake, but out of this weird creative integrity. But this time, Morty and Rick do return to their carnage. And it's so wrecked that the episode's director admitted the artists of the episode were a bit disgusted.
Some of the boys were like uncomfortable working on the episode. It's dark. It gets dark.
And the episode goes back and shows us the humanity of the race that was slaughtered. Yes, it's a bit weird and pseudo-incesty to see the facehuggers Steve and Bruce make out with the voices of a boy and his grandfather, but keep in mind both characters are voiced by Justin Roiland anyway, so it's less incest than it is role-play masturbation. The Glorzo race is right to want to put Morty and Rick to death. They're terrorists responsible for so much murder. The universe and the multiverse would be safer and a better place without them. But Rick, Morty, and Summer, they escape by bursting all of them. And when they go home, they admit that unlike the civilization they eradicated, they have not evolved at all.
Maybe we don't tell people about this one.
Did we at least learn something?
That we suck and everyone sucks?
I guess that counts.
And they end the episode thinking they're gonna shit an egg, but nope, that's too sophisticated for these monsters. Instead, they get swifty and shit on the floor. Interestingly, this whole debate over who's the more uncivilized, lesser evolved species was addressed in the original Alien. Part of the reason it's my favorite film. When the android Ash opines that the humans were lesser evolved compared to the exquisite xenomorph, and therefore the humans deserve to die.
You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? Perfect organism.
You admire it.
I admire its purity.
Yeah, that kind of purity is more applicable to the gross facehuggers than to the terrorists who wiped them out by 9/11 Pearl Harbor. That's a sentence. Okay, is this explanation legit or shit? We'll get some second opinions, but first, folks, in order to get these after show episodes out to you so quickly, I am literally writing and shooting them in the middle of the night. So it helps to get a solid night's sleep when I finish so I can get right back to rewatching the episodes frame by frame. Well, thanks to Helix Sleep for helping me out and sponsoring this episode. Helix Sleep makes personalized mattresses made right here in America and shipped straight to your door with free no-contact delivery, free returns, and a 100-night sleep trial. To choose a mattress, Helix made a quiz that takes just 2 minutes to complete and matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you. If you like a mattress that's really soft or one that's really firm, if you sleep on your side or on your back or on your stomach, or if you sleep really hot. With Helix, there's a specific mattress for each and everybody's unique taste. I took the quiz and I was matched with the Luxe Helix mattress because I wanted something that felt perfectly medium, and I sleep on my back to make it easier for the sleep paralysis demon to plank on me. I love it! I'm sleeping better and I'm waking up feeling more refreshed and ready to take on the latest Evil Morty conspiracy theories. I love Helix, but you don't need to take my word for it. Helix was awarded the #1 best overall mattress pick of 2020 by GQ, Wired Magazine, and Apartment Therapy. Just go to helixsleep.com/Ricksplained, take their 2-minute sleep quiz, and they'll match you to a customized mattress that will give you the best sleep of your life. They have a 10-year warranty, and you get to try it out for 100 nights risk-free. They'll even pick it up for you if you don't love it, but you will. Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners at helixsleep.com/Ricksplained. That's Helix, Helix, sleep.com/Ricksplained for up to $200 off. And we are back. Joining me is one of the most familiar voices in animation from series like Teen Titans, Unikitty, Powerpuff Girls, and on Rick and Morty, characters like Tinkles, Stacy, and last week, Morty's assassin disguise.
I didn't know it was you.
How did you not recognize me? Didn't you create the disguises?
Tara Strong. Thanks for joining us, Tara.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
And always welcome back to the show, superfan and face-hugging parasite survivor. I'm reading Tommy Bechtold.
I'm relieved to be here, yes.
All right, this episode crossed a threshold with a 9/11 joke. Oh, we should say an avoiding 9/11 joke, thank God. They swerved at the last second. But
I think they really avoided it.
Yeah.
They both avoided and steered back into it at the same time. I think,
and then they revisited it later, like
yes.
revisited it.
I think if you say the numbers 9/11 in close sequence, you're making a 9/11 reference, and there's no bones about it.
It's like when It's like when you were a kid and you like hold your hand over your middle finger to your sister and say like, you don't know what I'm doing behind this hand, but it's terrible, and they know.
Yeah, you're doing it. Yeah, we know what you're doing. But as this episode also points out, Morty and Rick have done far worse war crimes over the years. Thousands are dead as a result of their actions. Do you guys think it's accurate to call these characters terrorists at this point? Are they meant to be rooted for anyway, or do we just laugh at them going forward?
It is funny that we root for them. They're despicable. I mean, they really are. It's so, and it's like nothing's off limits. There's no boundaries. Nobody's safe. It's like, but you still root for them. You love them. I mean, it's like the most loved animated show I can think of in a really long time. For me personally, my kids really like it, and they're 18 and 15. So to have something that they're really into, like they get really excited when I'm in an episode. So that's a win.
What do you think, Tommy?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's like you see like in other media like Avengers, Infinity War, Thanos was clearly the protagonist, but you never really were rooting for him. Whereas Rick and Morty are front and center, obviously the title characters of the show. Yeah, they continuously do despicable things, but I guess they're just so fun. You know, like it's almost like following the cool kid in high school that you know it's bad. You shouldn't follow him. You shouldn't drink beer with him in his dad's garage, but you just want to. It's charisma, I guess. I guess they have the charisma. They're like cult leaders, you know? Yeah.
That's an interesting description. I mean, I feel like as long as they remind us that they're not role models. They can get away with a lot more. But also, whenever they go too far to say, hey, don't follow our example, we're not role models, the fans also backlash against that. They're like, well, hey, we've been following you off this cliff for 3 years. Now you tell us it's not okay? In addition to the whole 9/11 thing, there was also this weird moment, and it was very weird. One of the creepier moments, I think, where like their face huggers profess their love for each other, embrace, but and it was clearly the aliens that were doing that, but they retained the voices of Rick and of Morty. So there was some incest implied, but like, but also it's weird when you think it's Justin Roiland is doing the voice of both characters. Do you guys think it's possible to go too far on this show? Are there jokes that cross any lines? Is there a line at all?
I mean, that scene was a little surprising and disturbing. I don't think they have any lines. I don't. I think they're getting away with everything somehow. You know, sometimes you just have these shows that do. Like for me, the biggest one I'd like that would be Drawn Together, you know. Before this, where like anything goes and everyone gets away with it. But yeah, I think this will it'll like shock people in the moment, then they'll be over it and wait for the next one.
Yeah, I kind of feel like piggybacking on that. It's like they do things that you're like, oh wow, this is one of the most shocking things they've ever done on the show, and that almost just opens a gateway to like, how can they top this? And like, you know, and because they're fake, obviously you're like, all right, these are fictional characters. Like you're not that. It's not as horrifying as like on Game of Thrones when Cersei and Jaime Lannister are. You see like two human actors doing it. Here you can kind of disassociate, I guess, a little more. It's a little less. I don't know. It was obviously
just a little, but just a little less.
Yeah, just slightly less than the actors. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that is something that Game of Thrones got away with that it definitely should have, is the whole fan culture of shipping this brother and sister to stay together, like rooting for them to be each other's soulmates. Like, there's nothing okay about that, but weirdly they got away with it. I thought it was interesting how both this episode and last episode ended with this weird call to like return to interdimensional cable. Let's just sit down and watch interdimensional cable. Like I'll be interested to see if next episode does that as well. Do you guys feel like maybe Rick and Morty might be like trying to urge itself to return back to the simpler bits of just one-off vignettes where they can just make jokes as opposed to paying off any kind of stories or developing character?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of story payoffs right now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know that some of the episodes don't feel connected, but listen, I know too much, so I can't say too much. I know too much.
Right.
But I will say that it continues to entertain, be funny, delight. Like, you're never let down by an episode. I don't think there's one episode that you're like, well, that wasn't great. They're also great.
Yeah.
And it's the show has this formula now to where even if you weren't crazy about one episode, like there's enough there to like that it's not like the story is so crucial that like, well, I don't like where they're going with the story, because really the vehicle of the joke, the vehicle of the show is the jokes and the concepts and how quickly they run through all of them.
And some of them are like for sure funnier than others. I've sat and watched episodes where I'm like, you have to pause that. I'm like on the floor crying, laughing. I didn't have that with the last couple, although I enjoyed them. But certainly some episodes are like that. Some of them are just so funny.
Yeah. Well, Tara, the one that stands out in my mind of that was season 2's Total Recall. That's my favorite episode. And obviously you voiced Tinkles in that episode. In the moment where it just goes into the musical sequence, the magical bedtime land, it was like the peak of that insanity. And I gotta ask you, what was it like recording that character?
Oh my God, it was so much fun. Like they wanted her to have like a little Bubbles feel to her. And at the time, like, you know, we go first, so we don't see the animation until after. So I didn't know it was going to be like that. I had some idea in my head of how it was going to look, but it came out so much more fun and so much cuter than I had originally thought it was going to. And it's such a genius episode. It's so clever. I was just stoked that there was a pop figure at Comic-Con that I could get.
Yes.
Well, as we learned last episode, it is just about this selling the toys, selling the merch. So if there's a buck to be made, they'll do it. I love that. And I one thing I loved about the Tinkles character, and like all the characters you played, there's like a sense of familiarity to where we feel like Tinkles was always part of that show. The way all those those viral characters popped in, it's like, oh yeah, they've always been part of this party. Were there any other kind of improvised bits that you did when you were recording the audio for that?
Whew, I can't remember if they let us improv a little, but the scripts are so well written. We mostly stick to the scripts, but you do have that sense with a lot of characters. And then just this last episode, a character came back.
Oh yeah, Abradolf Linkler, right?
Oh God.
We thought he was gone. I mean, maybe Tinkles will come back one day. I don't know. But you feel like these characters have always been around, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And who's real and who's not real and who's who. Like, I think that's one thing that keeps people coming back for more is nobody really knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah, there's no established rules. And we saw last episode, canon is just like a word that's always in quotes on the show. Like, characters die, characters come back. There's a multiverse at stake here, and at no point is any character alive or dead. Now, obviously, Tara, you've worked on a lot of shows. How is Rick and Morty different than the other shows you've worked on?
Well, as an animated series, most animated series we work together with the other actors. Rick and Morty, you're by yourself, just with the crew. No other actors in the studio at the same time. Which there's good and bad. Like when there's other actors in the room, you get to play off them. So if someone says something a funny way, you might respond in a different way because, as the actor, you're listening to everyone too. So if someone's like, we gotta go, you might go, okay. So you don't have that benefit of playing off the other actors. But at the same time, you have a little bit more time to get it right and make it perfect. And it's just you in that room. So they really focus on your character for a little bit. And they're such a delight to work for. They're always so happy. It's always a happy environment to go in to work for them. They always have some toy for me or some like Rick and Morty skateboard for my kids or something like that. And they always surprise me. We don't often, I don't even think I've ever got a script in advance. And that's very common for voiceover. You get in there and you kind of jump in. It's one of those shows that you can't really predict how it's going to go, other than it's always going to be fun. It's always going to be hilarious. There'll always be a few little extra characters thrown in. And like, can you just do this one? And can you do this little extra character there? And then it's fun to watch the episode and try and find them.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. And you know what? Even if you did have the cast in the room, it would mostly be Justin, right? Like it's either him or sometimes Dan will get in there and do voices. Like it feels like already kind of all within his mind anyway on that show.
Right, that's true. But it would still be fun to play off of. It'd be fun. But they use a smaller studio and it's just one at a time.
Yeah, it feels like a labor of love, a very intimate process. But it's interesting about Total Recall and last week's episode, Never Rick and Morty, this episode, Interdimensional Cable, all the references to that, and several other episodes. They're all these vignette-based stories. Rick and Morty strikes me as a show that gets bored with its own stories, so it has to move through them quickly and tell like multiple stories an episode. And why do you think Rick and Morty leans into this kind of sprint storytelling? Is there a method to this madness? Is it trying to say something grander about how we should interpret stories, that we shouldn't get too attached to any one particular story, maybe?
It's been interesting this season. I mean, they've kind of referenced it along the way, but this season there seems to be a lot of like, we don't need to try too hard. We try too hard, and this is why things got messed up between Rick and Morty. Like, they keep coming to the conclusion of, like, if they had just done something easier, they wouldn't have gotten into the mess. So I wonder, like, it feels almost like we're being set up for something. Like, the way you said they would keep returning to watching Interdimensional Cable at the end of the day, like, that seems to be a theme that they keep saying, like, when we try too hard, bad things happen. And I think with the stories, it seems to be like that could be a metaphor or a reference to the writing. Like when they try and make the stories too convoluted, it goes off the rails. Whereas if they stick to simple structure, I'm not sure. I mean, that just to me was one thing that stuck out is they keep referencing if they had taken the easy way out, things would have been better, which is a funny lesson. Obviously not necessarily true.
I think that's true. And I think also one of the things that keeps people coming back, aside from the comedy and the writing and the acting and the visuals, it's such a great collaborative process and combination of genius things that go together and make this show so great, is this sort of current I think, collective consciousness about looking into aliens and how we're not alone in all these different dimensions and different universes, and how do you become enlightened and all these things that happen when you die. And I think without sticking to a basic story, they can jump in and get like 10 different ideas within one episode.
Yeah.
And I think that there just seems to be a sort of overlying theme, like around the world, especially right now, going on about like what are we doing here, you know?
Yeah, I hear that. That is a good point. And because the world has gotten so complicated and so many tropes have been done in sci-fi storytelling, Rick and Morty seems to hold itself to a higher standard of not just telling one basic story. Like, for example, I found this episode interesting. It's called Promortyus. It's clearly referencing certain things about the Alien franchise in Prometheus, but it's not a Prometheus parody. That's just like, you know, the surface of it, but then it goes into these deeper, darker places. And if you look back on Rick and Morty, that's kind of what it always does, is it's never just a parody of one thing. It's kind of like 4 or 5 episodes in one.
They're also so genius at the flashback sequences. Like, I didn't really see that one coming, even though I'm like, oh, whoa.
Yeah.
I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah, we're so used to Rick and Morty starting in the middle of things as some kind of insane adventure that we were just kind of like, we shrugged it off. Oh, whatever, they got face huggers. They're getting eggs. Who cares? But then, yeah, we see the whole backstory to that. Yeah, that was a very interesting right turn I didn't see coming. Well, Tara, we're very excited. We know you can't say much about the upcoming episodes, but we're very excited to we'll be listening closely to hopefully hear your voice show up in future episodes of Rick and Morty. And we really appreciate you joining us this week. This has been great. This has been a great discussion.
Thank you. You will. I'm super excited for what I have coming up, and I'm not going to tell you anything about it.
Fair enough. Right. Fair enough. That's this week's episode of Ricksplained, everyone. Again, big thanks to Tara and to Tommy for joining us. Always great to have some wonderful people to chat with, especially during these weird times where we're talking to screens and listening to earbuds. But we're getting through this, and we appreciate everyone tuning in. You can get early audio versions of this show by subscribing to Ricksplained wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on social media, follow New Rockstars, subscribe to this channel for more Rick and Morty breakdowns. And a reminder that the breakdown of the episode of all the hidden animation details and jokes, that's going to be coming up in another video. And we'll close out this week on our favorite moment this episode.
Do you suffer from Alzheimer's? 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 Reggie? Do you suffer from Alzheimer's? Reggie, all right in there?